I'm the Game Triple H, and I would like to personally welcome you to
Wrestling Trope Alert.
This is 48-year-old veteran FIT Finlay. The date is July 14th, 2006. This is FIT Finlay's highest peak of his long career and his only WWE title win. By the end of this match, Finlay becomes the United States champion.
Power man. Put into be a 2-on-1 match. Finlay. Once of Europe are now just no miss. The powerhouse put another drop.
I'm Finlay, and I've come here to fight!
Defense. Wait a minute. It's a little bit. It's a little bit. Yes, we got a new United States.
Hello and welcome to Wrestling Trope Alert, the channel where we analyze professional wrestling. If this is your first time here, please remember to subscribe for future content. Thank you for watching. Finlay was signed as a wrestler in late 2005, and before the WWE, Finlay had an extensive career with WWE's former competitor WCW, which Finlay had left back in the year 2000. After Finlay left WCW, Finlay was recruited by the WWE to work as an agent/producer. In the early 2000s, women wrestlers were mainly portrayed as eye candy.
That Christy Hemi's hot. Man, I'd like to fluff her pillows.
And FIT Finlay would be the driving force changing the perception of women wrestlers in the WWE by helping WWE greats such as TRISH STRATUS, Victoria, Molly Holly to become better in-ring competitors. Finlay would be introduced to the audience with the usual 3 weeks worth of vignettes. A short but effective way to introduce new wrestlers to the audience, and something that was very common for the time. The location chosen for these vignettes, Finlay's hometown of Carricksburg. Fun fact, Finlay is asked to smile by the producers of these promos, and Finlay initially says no, because Finlay likes to portray himself as the bad guy. Eventually he relents and looks terrifying doing so. On the January 20th episode of SmackDown, Finlay would debut in a match with Matt Hardy. Finlay is a man who brings the intensity, and his presence alone is something special. As Finlay makes his entrance, the face of Matt Hardy tells the whole story. It's the face of someone who's going to have a very rough day at the office. They tell a great story in a match that only lasts 5 minutes. The match starts and suddenly it becomes real. A stiff kick, European uppercut, ass drop, a slap to the face. Finlay drives his knee into the back of Hardy's head, causing Hardy to impact the canvas.
This is such good.
The precision and intensity Finlay brings to this match is phenomenal. Finlay is a severely underrated veteran. A near fall and a death stare at the referee. I bet the referee feared for his life right there. Hardy gets back to a vertical base, delivers punches to Finlay's gut. Later in the match, Hardy continues his offense, driving Finlay to the corner. Then Hardy Irish whips Finlay to the ropes. Finlay recovers, and as Finlay is returning from the ropes, he viciously kicks Hardy. Hardy is now looking for the twist of fate. Finlay avoids him and gets out of the ring. Then as Hardy is attempting to baseball slide Finlay, Finlay lifts up the ring skirt and traps Hardy. Innovative offense by the former Belfast Bruiser. Finlay punishes Hardy with some devastating strikes. Releases him, gets back in the ring, then Finlay lays Hardy on the bottom rope, and Finlay proceeds to strike Hardy as the referee counts. Finlay doesn't stop hitting Hardy and is disqualified for ignoring the referee. The story being told is of the man so violent that he can stay within the confines of the rules, and is disqualified because of this. Finlay's first match in the WWE ending in a disqualification is great storytelling. Finlay then grabs a microphone and asks the referee,
You're You're gonna disqualify me for that?
Then, to add insult to injury, Finlay further damages Hardy with the aid of some steel chairs. Give this man all the titles.
This is such good sh**.
After the match with Hardy, the people in charge feed him Funaki. Finlay dismantles Funaki and gets the pinfall win with his WWE finishing move, the Celtic Cross. Fun fact, Finlay's pre-WWE finishing move was the Tombstone Piledriver.
Tombstone Piledriver!
Finlay's path of destruction continues the very next week. Booker T is tangled up with Chris Benoit in a 6-month-long feud, and Finlay is going to act as the third wheel in their rivalry. Booker T and Benoit are involved in a best-of-7 match series, but towards the end of that series, Booker T gets injured and can finish where he started. So Randy Orton steps in against Benoit, and new mid-card rival Finlay also substitutes for Booker. Fun fact, Benoit and Booker have been feuding on and off since 1998, back in WCW. Finlay was also the third wheel for Booker T and Benoit back then. Finlay even won the WCW World Television title due to Benoit's distraction of Booker T. Finlay battles Benoit in a short match that needed more time. Finlay holds his own against Benoit, keeping Booker T's title firmly in Booker's hands. Towards the end of the match, Booker T interferes and Finlay gets disqualified. Booker, the master of deception, is no longer injured. Again, nobody loses by pinfall, both men win in the long run. The very next week, Finlay doesn't have a match, lays waste to the Little People roster instead. It was probably during this segment that Vince McMahon came up with the Hornswoggle gimmick. Side note, at this time there was some friction with WWE's broadcast partner, UPN, portrayed on camera by the human embodiment of watching paint dry, Palmer Cannon. The so-called junior division was in storyline Palmer Cannon's idea, and by extension the network UPN. Palmer introduced the so-called junior division to the SmackDown broadcasts, despite the general manager Theodore Long's opposition.
Explain something to you people. What happens in this ring?
Come on, barricade. Oh, stop
Holy!
this!
I take real serious. This is such good.
Finlay would then be added to the ongoing rivalries of SmackDown. Finlay teams up with JBL against Benoit and Lashley in a winning effort. The following week, the bad guy team of Randy Orton, JBL and Finlay sustains a loss against the good guy team of Lashley, Benoit and Mysterio. Common opponents for Finlay in these tag matches are Bobby Lashley and Chris Benoit. Bobby Lashley would be a common antagonist to Finlay for the rest of the year, more on that later. Chris Benoit and Finlay would have a rivalry later in May, in the weeks leading up to the Judgment Day 2006 pay-per-view. Stemming from a loss Benoit sustained in the returning King of the Ring tournament against Finlay, and also a loss by pinfall at the hands of Finlay by Benoit's storyline protege Gunnar Scott, Finlay along with Booker T would wrestle Chris Benoit and Gunnar Scott on the May 19th episode of SmackDown. Yes, that May 19th.
Fate is here tonight. Referee Shawn Michaels attempting to put the shirt on Rob Conway. Rob Conway! Bro, you here to destroy him, Kane?
2 days later, at the Judgment Day 2006 pay-per-view, Benoit and Finlay would battle in a very physical 20-minute match. Benoit wins this match after Benoit goes face first into the ring post, somehow manages to fight back, then applies the crossface on Finlay, making him tap out immediately, thus winning the match. Judgment Day 2006 was also the pay-per-view where Booker T becomes King of the Ring. Later in the evening, of the distraction Queen Charmel creates, Finlay interferes by hitting Lashley with a shillelagh. Booker scissor kicks Lashley, pinfall for the win, Booker becomes King of the Ring. This would be the start of what would be the pinnacle of Booker T's wrestling career, as the character King Booker. Back to Finlay and Bobby Lashley's rivalry, it's WrestleMania season. WrestleMania 22 is on the horizon, and at this time the Money in the Bank match, Chris Jericho's creation,
I have an idea for a match. Other elite superstars, chance of a lifetime. One very big, solid steel ladder.
is still a match on WrestleMania's card. Matches are being held to determine the 6 men who will participate in the ladder match. This is the beginning of the ever-present feud between FIT Finlay and Bobby Lashley. Lashley is the man who would come to hold the United States title that Finlay would eventually capture months later. Their rivalry for a spot in the Money in the Bank match spanned 3 weeks. In the first week, a short while after the match began, Finlay loses his temper and decides to get some shares. Referee calls for the bell and the match is over. A pull-apart then evolves, sheer testosterone and intensity, great stuff, all this for a match on the mid-card.
This is such good.
The following week the same thing happened but different. As Lashley is entering the ring, Finlay goes to him shillelagh in hand. Then chaos ensues. The violence dissolves into a pull-apart. Security, referees, everyone is trying to stop these madmen from destroying each other. Lashley spears Finlay on the entranceway. Beautiful violence that continues outside in the parking lot. Finlay is no stranger to parking lot brawls. Finlay comes prepared with a steel pipe, then Lashley pushes Finlay on top of the car's roof while punishing Finlay with some vicious strikes. Finlay is now sailing on the car's roof. Lashley is now attempting to lift the car from the side. Gravity takes Finlay to the concrete floor, then Lashley overturns a Ford Taurus with sheer strength and willpower. Finlay escapes just in time.
This is such good.
Again, SmackDown 2006 delivers. Eventually, the powers that be decide that the best course of action is to have a lumberjack match between FIT Finlay and Bobby Lashley. A simple and effective way to decide who advances to WrestleMania. Lashley versus Finlay with all the lower cards surrounding the ring. The match goes for 9 minutes and is sheer intensity, as the powerhouse Lashley attempts to dominate the veteran Finlay. The heel Finlay causes the Lumberjacks to interfere heavily. Off the distraction caused by Sylvan, Finlay wins the match by hitting Lashley with a shillelagh. Finlay wins the Lumberjack match and advances to WrestleMania, his first WrestleMania ever at 48 years old. Bobby Lashley loses his opportunity to wrestle in the Money in the Bank match at WrestleMania for a full week, because WWE Creative gives another opportunity to Lashley the following episode of SmackDown, in a so-called Last Chance Battle Royale involving mostly the lower card. Unfortunately, it's very obvious from the participants in this match who will come out victorious. Bobby Lashley goes the distance in this Battle Royale, and by the end of the match, Eminem, Tatanka and Lashley are the last 4 men standing. After Tatanka gets eliminated by Eminem, Lashley holds his own against a team of Morrison and Mercury. WWE Wrestling Trope Alert: destroying a tag team's credibility to boost wrestlers from singles division. Then Lashley proceeds to dismantle both men, eliminating them simultaneously, and advancing to the Money in the Bank match at WrestleMania 22, 2 weeks later. Finlay is also in action on this episode of SmackDown. Finlay is wrestling Mysterio, who just won the Royal Rumble and is scheduled for a match at WrestleMania 22 against Randy Orton and the World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle. During the final moments of this match, Finlay comes back with a sunset flip, Mysterio rolls back and delivers a beautiful kick to Finlay's face.
By Mysterio, a moment of time, sunset flip, Mysterio. Oh!
This is such good.
Finlay was kicked so hard, his son felt it. Finlay then goes for the shillelagh, then referee Charles Robinson stops him.
I'm talking about little nature boy Charles Robinson, you got it?
A wild Randy Orton appears, out of nowhere you might say, and RKO's Mysterio. Now check this. Finlay, who is a wrestling genius, distracts the referee by falling back at the exact moment Orton is applying his RKO. Finlay protects the integrity of the referee and of this match, creating another impact of his own, so the referee doesn't have to pretend he didn't feel the impact of Orton's RKO on Mysterio.
This is such good.
Finlay then takes advantage and wins this match by pinfall. This wasn't the only match that FIT Finlay and Rey Mysterio would have before Finlay became the United States Champion. They would also wrestle months later on the June 9th episode of SmackDown. By June, Rey Mysterio would be the World Heavyweight Champion, which he won at WrestleMania 22 from his match with Kurt Angle and Randy Orton. And in this storyline, Paul Heyman is trying to convince Mysterio to come join the new ECW roster and bring the title with him. Mysterio refuses to go to ECW, and Finlay takes revenge on Mysterio on behalf of Paul Heyman. In this match, Finlay delivers a brutal beatdown on the champion, and Rey Mysterio counters with movement and speed. In the final moments of the match, the action spills to the outside and Mysterio is not moving. Then Mysterio disappears under the ring. Mysterio gets saved by Finlay, who drags Mysterio out from under the ring, with Hornswoggle's face glued to Mysterio's ass. Your World Heavyweight Champion, everyone! I made a video dedicated just to Hornswoggle's involvement with Finlay during this time. Links are in the description. This disappearing wrestler gimmick first happens a week before on the June 2nd episode of SmackDown. Towards the end of Finlay's match with independent wrestler Caden Matthews, Caden finds himself halfway under the ring. Then poof, he disappears. Eventually Caden returns, the implication being Hornswoggle beat the crap out of Caden. Finlay then wins with the Celtic Cross. Back to WrestleMania and the Money in the Bank match. WrestleMania 22. The one where Mick Foley speared Edge through a flaming table. Participants in this match are Bobby Lashley, Finlay, Matt Hardy, 57-year-old Ric Flair, the ever underrated Shelton Benjamin, and the eventual winner Rob Van Dam. Side note: Rob Van Dam winning the briefcase was the setup for the main event of ECW's One Night Stand pay-per-view, later in June 2006. Rob Van Dam wins the briefcase in this match and goes on to challenge Cena for his WWE Championship title. And in this match, one of the greatest moments in professional wrestling happens. Cena throwing his t-shirt back and forth with the audience while being showered with tremendous amounts of hostility.
This is such good.
Finlay and Lashley's feud carries over into this match. Match starts and immediately Finlay gets a shot on Lashley. Hooray for continuity. Soon after, Flair is removed from most of the match after a superplex off a ladder. He would return stumbling and attempt to climb a ladder sometime later. Flair with some knife-edge chops to Hardy and Shelton. Back in the ladder, Flair is close to the briefcase. Finlay climbs the ladder and hits Flair with a shillelagh. The crowd boos for the bad Irishman. Van Daminator off the corner to Lashley.
This is such good.
Hardy is now climbing and has a hand on the briefcase. Finlay also climbs, and from the top of the ladder, Hardy gives Finlay a side effect. Now Van Dam in the corner ladder falls on Finlay. Shelton jumps into frame like Spider-Man in a movie. No other camera angle was available, and sadly, no replay. Shelton Benjamin is the underrated springboard master. Hardy and Shelton fight on the side ladder. Ladder falls. Both men take a horrible tumble all the way outside. Rob Van Dam then becomes Mr. Money in the Bank and is so excited he even drops the briefcase. After WrestleMania, Finlay feuded with Chris Benoit as previously discussed. And fast forward to May 26, 2006 and the introduction of Hornswoggle. Finlay is going to have a match with the pirate Paul Burchill, WWE's Jack Sparrow ripoff. Match lasts 1 minute and 20 seconds and it ends with a Celtic Cross. After the match ends, Finlay goes for his shillelagh, then proceeds to ringside, lifts up the ring skirt, and under the ring shines a green light. Finlay is waiting for something to happen. Seconds later he shouts at Under the Ring, and out from under the ring comes running 19-year-old Dylan Postal. The character later named Hornswoggle appears incensed with rage, running all over the place. Then the Mad Leprechaun proceeds to deliver some violence to Pirate Man. Finlay then drags Swoggle and shoves him under the ring. Finlay signals the referee for his shillelagh and leaves the ring area.
This is such good.
Side note: also in this SmackDown episode, Bobby Lashley captures the United States title. SmackDown opens with a promo from Rey Mysterio and JBL. JBL is boasting that he is the toughest man alive. Cue Bobby Lashley, who in 1 minute and 24 seconds captures the United States Championship from the loudmouth Texan. JBL had won the title from Benoit at WrestleMania 22 back in April, and Benoit won the title from Booker T back in February at the No Way Out pay-per-view. So each man holds the title close to 2 months, and then on to the next wrestler. The following week, Finlay has a match with Caden Matthews, which we have already talked about. Then later in the SmackDown broadcast, Finlay comes out with Regal to lay the violence on Lashley, who is celebrating his victory in his match against the recently crowned King Booker. Regal attacks Lashley and Finlay joins the fun, shillelagh in hand. Lashley holds on, but Booker T picks up the scraps and delivers a hook hand. Lashley fights back, but eventually gets beat down again. Another shillelagh shot and Booker delivers another scissor kick. Booker sits in his throne, calls Lashley a peasant.
You peasant!
Insults the audience, and Regal and Finlay make Lashley bow down to King Booker. Then Finlay grabs Lashley's lips and they rub Lashley's face on King Booker's feet. SmackDown goes off the air with Queen Sharmell telling us to hail King Booker.
This is such good.
Fast forward to June 16th, a tag match between Finlay and his King Booker's court associate William Regal, against the former foes from months past, Matt Hardy and Gunnar Scott. A match that Finlay and Regal win after interference by Hornswoggle. The referee Nick Patrick gets distracted, Finlay hits Gunnar Scott with a shillelagh and wins the match for Booker's court. And there's also further interference by Hornswoggle. This sets up a match the following week, between Finlay and Gunnar Scott, which Finlay wins. On the June 30th episode of SmackDown, Matt Hardy and FIT Finlay square off in the middle of the ring, in a repeat match from back in January when FIT Finlay debuted on SmackDown, now with the addition of Hornswoggle to Finlay's bag of tricks. The match plays out much the same way as the one from January, a very physical match from both men and a longer match than before, 7 minutes instead of 5. This one doesn't end by disqualification, however. This match ends after Finlay attempts to hit Hardy with a shillelagh, but Hardy dodges. Hardy fights back, punching Finlay down to the canvas. Hardy now has the shillelagh in plain view of referee Charles Robinson.
I'm talking about little nature boy Charles Robinson, you got it?
Robinson is disposing of the weapon. Finlay dodges Hardy's punches and drops him face first into a previously exposed turnbuckle. Down goes Hardy. Finlay gets Hardy in the Celtic Cross, a vicious pinfall, and Finlay wins the match. This was another great match on a random SmackDown from 2006 and massively delivered on all fronts. Later in the evening, King Booker is wrestling the United States Champion Bobby Lashley in a steel cage. Finlay would interfere in this match, attempting to open the cage and hitting Lashley with a shillelagh and also the cage door. Finlay would also attempt to climb the cage and further interfere in the match. Lashley eventually wins the match by managing to climb out of the cage, then Lashley takes out Regal and scares Finlay away. Still the United States Champion, Bobby Lashley. WWE decided to switch gears. They would no longer position King Booker as the contender for the United States Championship. Because of how great Booker's portrayal was of the character, the powers that be decide to position King Booker on top of the card. So in order for Booker to become world champion, first he has to be the #1 contender. At this time, Rey Mysterio is the World Heavyweight Champion and has been holding the title ever since WrestleMania 22. So on the July 7th episode of SmackDown, a World Heavyweight title #1 contender Battle Royale is arranged, with all our favorite superstars from the mid-card. King Booker wins this Battle Royale with the aid of his loyal court associates Regal and Finlay. Later in this match, after Paul London gets eliminated by Finlay, Regal eliminates Brian Kendrick. Hardy delivers a twist of fate to Regal and then Hardy eliminates Finlay. The match ends with Booker pushing Regal and Hardy, and Booker will become the #1 contender for the title that Rey Mysterio holds. Booker T would become the world champion at the following pay-per-view, the Great American Bash, on the 23rd of July. This leads us to our main story, which is Finlay wins the United States title. On the July 14th episode of SmackDown, announced in the early moments of the broadcast, a singles match is going to happen between Bobby Lashley and FIT Finlay. Almost 2 weeks away is the Great American Bash, and better yet, the following day Saturday night's main event airs on NBC. They could have made this title switch happen the very next day at a special event, thus making this title switch mean that much more. Or worst case scenario, wait 2 weeks and then do it at the Great American Bash. But for some reason they decide to change the title from Lashley to Finlay in a random SmackDown instead, much in the way Bobby Lashley won the title from JBL months earlier, with almost no build-up whatsoever. Maybe they didn't want multiple titles changing hands at the Bash, maybe they knew that in that pay-per-view Lashley would come down with a serious case of elevated liver enzymes.
Bobby Lashley, elevated enzymes in the liver.
I don't know, but more on that later. Finlay makes his way to the ring, looking tough as usual with his shillelagh in hand. Bobby Lashley, with his tough day at the office face, makes his entrance. Match begins and Finlay starts by playing mind games with Lashley. Lashley pushes Finlay to the corner, establishing himself as the stronger opponent. Referee Charles Robinson breaks it up.
I'm talking about little nature boy Charles Robinson, you got it?
Lashley punishes Finlay with some strong forearms and another lockup. Finlay goes behind, drops Lashley to one knee and proceeds to choke Lashley. European uppercut to the corner. A fierce couple of punches. Lashley counters back with his own offense moves. Delayed vertical suplex. Finlay falls like a sack of rocks. Out of the ring rolls Finlay to gather his thoughts. Later in the match, Finlay gets a clothesline hard in the chest. Finlay then leaves the ring and starts swinging chairs inside the ring. Back in the ring, Lashley kicks Finlay in the gut. Off the ropes comes Finlay and Lashley hits a back body drop. Lashley, the babyface, picks up the shillelagh and throws Finlay's equalizer to the entranceway. Fun fact: Finlay recovers the shillelagh during the last moments of this segment. Lashley with another kick to the stomach, forearms and a kick to Lashley's chest from Finlay. A strong right hand from Lashley causes Finlay to leave the ring as they brawl outside. Finlay almost causes himself to be disqualified by trying to hit Lashley with a steel chair, but Lashley dodges and Finlay hits the steel steps instead. Back in the ring, a crazed Lashley has a chair in his hand. Charles Robinson gets distracted. Hornswoggle picks from under the ring skirt, delivers a second shillelagh to Finlay, who proceeds to hit Lashley behind the referee's back. Finlay steals the title from Lashley and becomes the United States champion. This would be his only championship title win in the WWE. Finlay would be champion for almost 2 months. He would lose the title September 1st in a triple threat match against Bobby Lashley and Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy would win the title from FIT Finlay and he would keep it for 42 days, then losing it to Chris Benoit on the October 13 episode of SmackDown. Looming in the horizon after Finlay wins the US title was the triple threat match at the Great American Bash. In the weeks leading up to the pay-per-view, the Lashley vs Finlay feud continued with a singles match on the July 21st episode of SmackDown. Lashley would win by disqualification, keeping the title on Finlay. Then at the Great American Bash, the triple threat match would have to be changed last minute. Bobby Lashley was unable to compete. Theodore Long announces that because of elevated liver enzymes,
Bobby Lashley, elevated enzymes in the liver.
Lashley is out of the three-way match. Lashley cuts a promo, says he's fine and should be cleared to wrestle. Upon further research, apparently during this time there was some concern backstage with hepatitis, which shows up on medical exams as elevated liver enzymes. And Lashley wasn't the only one removed from the card. Super Crazy was also replaced with Matt Hardy for the Cruiserweight title match with Shane Helms. And the Great Khali, who was supposed to have a Punjabi prison match with The Undertaker, was also replaced with a Big Show. From what I can gather, the three men were fine, and the results were eventually ruled as false positives. Finlay and his Booker T's court associate William Regal would then feud for the following weeks. Regal was essentially working as a placeholder for Lashley, and the Regal and Finlay mini feud would last until the August 4th episode of SmackDown, when Lashley would be medically cleared to return to in-ring competition. The WWE used this opportunity to further develop Finlay's companion, Hornswoggle. I go deeper into these matches in my other video about how Hornswoggle helped FIT Finlay win and keep the United States Championship title. If you are interested, links are in the description. Finlay and Regal had 3 matches during this time. At the Great American Bash, Finlay wins by pinfall, hitting Regal with his own boot that Swoggle had removed from Regal while he was stuck in the ring skirt. Following week on SmackDown, July 28th, as the referee is attempting to fix the ring, Hornswoggle takes advantage with a low blow to Regal, then Finlay capitalizes and rolls Regal up for the pinfall win. And on the August 4th episode of SmackDown, Regal wins the match by disqualification, because Finlay hit Regal with the shillelagh. Then Lashley appears after the end of the match. Finlay manages to escape by deceiving Regal into a makeshift alliance, and Lashley then applies the Dominator to William Regal. Bobby Lashley was now cleared to compete. On the August 11th episode of SmackDown, a tag match between Batista and Bobby Lashley against a team of Finlay and Regal was arranged. Both men attempt to somewhat make this sudden friendship appear normal. As they make their entrance, the uneasy face that Regal makes towards Finlay tries to convey that there's still some distrust among Regal and Finlay. There's also a promo backstage addressing their refreshed alliance. Batista and Lashley win this match after delivering a couple of spears, followed by a spinebuster on the legal man. Lashley would again attempt to win his title back from Finlay on the August 18th episode of SmackDown, but only managing to win a victory by disqualification. After this, the WWE creative team started to lose confidence in the Fighting Irishman. At that year's SummerSlam, Finlay, Regal and Mr. Anderson get beat up by the recently reformed Degeneration X. And on the following Raw broadcast on the August 28th episode, the same thing happens again. The writing was on the wall, and on the September 1st episode of SmackDown, Mr. Kennedy captured the title from Finlay after Lashley gives a spear to Finlay followed by a running power slam. Mr. Kennedy capitalizes with a schoolboy and steals the title. Mr. Kennedy wins the title, then immediately leaves the ring. Thank you for watching my video about one of the greatest wrestlers ever, an underrated professional wrestler, future Hall of Famer FIT Finlay. There's 2 more videos based around this topic of Finlay, links are in the description. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to press that like button and also subscribe for future content just like this, or better. This has been fun, thank you for watching.